What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about Unit 2, Topic 2.5, which is the cost of inflation. We're going to look at who's hurt by inflation and who's helped by inflation. And then we're going to look at some definition stuff. And then we're going to also look at the effects of hyperinflation. So again, this is Topic 2.5, the cost of inflation. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's see who is the effects of unanticipated inflation. So who is hurt by inflation if we have unanticipated inflation? So prices increase unanticipated, right? We didn't foresee them happening, right? So the groups that are the first group that we're going to look at that would be hurt by this would be lenders, right? People that are lending out money at a fixed interest rate, right? So that means that the fixed interest rate means that every month the interest rate is going to stay the same, right? Most loans are fixed interest rates loans, so that you guys have either experienced or will experience are going to be fixed interest rate loans. Again, that interest rate stays the same throughout the course of the loan. So how that affects those that are lending out money is what their purchasing power. So the purchasing power at the beginning of the loan, right? Let's just, for example, say they take out a $1,000 loan, and you take a $1,000 loan and you purchase a car with that, right? Well, the bank could do the same thing if they wanted to, right? Their purchasing power for that $1,000 was the car, right? So in 5 years, right, if there's rampant inflation, right, and we see that the car prices are now double what they were 5 years prior, right, then the bank's purchasing power wouldn't be to be able to purchase that car back, right? And so, or purchase a car, right? So they wouldn't be able to, for $1,000, they wouldn't be able to purchase a car, right? So that would affect lenders, right? Other groups that would be affected by this are people that are on fixed incomes, right? And what a fixed income is that when you get the same amount each month, right? So each month your wages are not going to change, right? So you get $1,000 each month, right? And so your purchasing power is what you can buy with that $1,000. Well, if prices increase, right, and your income doesn't increase, then you cannot buy the things you were buying before. So your purchasing power becomes less, right? And so that's another group that's affected by high inflation. Another group would be those that save, right? Again, if you're going to make a big purchase, right, and you save and you're just kind of putting it off, and then you have high inflation, well, you may not be able to afford what you wanted to buy due to saving, right, or kind of taking your time. So those that are helped by inflation are those that borrow, right? People who borrow money. Also, another group that's helped by inflation are businesses where the price of the product increases faster than the price of the resource, right? Now, let's look at a few definitions here with wages, right? So there are nominal wages, right? And nominal wages are just measuring the dollar amounts. They're not measuring the purchasing power of that dollar amount. They take out the inflation, right? It's not equated for inflation. Real wages, on the other hand, are equated for inflation. So they adjust for inflation. So you can see if there's inflation, or it's equated for inflation. So if you see inflation, right, you should ask your boss for a raise, right, obviously, and you'll see something called a wage spiral, right, and that is, if wages go up, prices go up, so you see inflation, and then inflation happens, wages will go up, right, because people will go and ask their boss for a raise because they need to afford the goods they were buying, right, and then prices go up, wages go up, prices go up, and it just keeps spiraling and spiraling up, right, so that again is called the wage price spiral. Okay, so so are there any negative effects any other negative effects of inflation? Sure, prices become higher, right? But what are the real economic costs that this might cause, right? Is high inflation rates divert people from productive activities in 3 ways, right? And those 3 things are menu costs, shoe leather costs, and units of account costs. So menu cost, right, is the cost of a menu to change the listed prices, right? So let's say McDonald's, right, is going to change all of their menus, right? So every single McDonald's in the United States is going to change their menus. That's very expensive for them to do. So they have to see, is that really worth it for us to change all of that because there's inflation going on, right? So they have to kind of do a comparative analysis to see if that's going to work out for them. Shoe leather cost, right, is the cost of transactions increase. So, if it costs more for you to go to the bank and, that now transactions are going to cost more, right? So products are going to cost more. Going to the bank, getting money from the bank, and then going back and forth, is that worth it? And then unit of account cost. So money doesn't reliably measure the value of goods and services. So this is going to lead to less efficient use of resources because uncertainty caused by changes in the current value. All right. So inflation rates, we've had some historic inflation rates, right, that have occurred, and then we've seen some negative inflation rates. The U.S. has incurred negative inflation rates in the late 1800s, right? Japan also recently had some negative inflation rates or deflation. And then we've had hyperinflation, right? Venezuela is probably the most current example of hyperinflation, but Argentina, Germany during post-World War I, they had hyperinflation. There's a famous picture of Denmark's. They would use Denmark's to use instead of firewood, right? Because the value of the dollar was, or the value of the Deutschmark at the time was less than what it was like the paper that it was written on. So people would use that as firewood instead. And then you can see the streets of there's a lot of pictures of the streets flooded with Deutschmarks and people just sweeping them up and throwing them away. So Serbia is also another example of hyperinflation, right? And so that's going to do it for us today for 2.5. Again, we covered who was helped and hurt by inflation, the effects of hyperinflation. Thank you guys. See ya.